Mike joined us this week. It's been a while.
Hey, how's it going?
Going
Yeah,
all right.
nice long vacation.
Welcome back. Yeah, we had your name on a few of the PRs, so I was like, where is this guy? Haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to remember what my status was on each of the PRs.
Yeah, there are a few that we're hoping to try to get merged at some point, and you've got a few of the comments on there. So I was like, well, before I just merge it and ignore all those comments, I want to make sure he's actually got answers to all the questions you've been asking.
Good morning for noon, everybody.
Hello, hello. How is ECR these days? Have we solved all the challenges you were working on?
No, we will eventually. No, it's really just it's a matter of like choosing what OCI 1.0 compliant behaviors to append to current functionality, right? This is very conservative, so for good reason. But there are some things we can do, like letting data in on descriptors or but
Or
yeah,
we could
it's
just get this whole 1.1
would be
released and we
great.
don't have
Would
to.
be great. Yes. I was just gonna say, like, it's just this like nebulous area of trying to do something in the future without the future being tangible. Yeah. Fully for it.
So no
Happy
pressure, Mike, but I
belated
think
New
it's all
Year.
coming down to you.
Oh yes. Let's go, Mike.
All right, we're a few minutes after here. I guess we can do a little bit of a soft start. TOB elections are happening right now. This is the round where it's the member organizations nominating and electing people. So if you work for one of the OCI member organizations and haven't gotten your nomination form in already, now is your last chance. I think as the 16th is the cutoff. It's supposed to be the 15th, but the 15th was a holiday, so Amy said 16th. So for all those OCI companies, get those in. Josh with a cool hat. I like it.
Is it just OCI companies or is it OCI members, which would include anybody who's like collegiate?
Yeah, it's members, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I think whoever is on the main webpage that's got like the member sponsor, whatever it is. Yeah.
I couldn't find a list. I was looking.
I was surprised when Amy updated the website that I didn't see a list somewhere else. But if you go to opencontainers.org,
There's a list there of
There
there
used
members.
to
is
be.
a OCI members graphic. move this to the other tab and I can share, and then we can just all say, oh, that's me. I recognize my name.
Except this isn't individuals, this is companies and
Companies.
organizations.
Yeah. So people from this list. So someone from ChainGuard, someone from AWS, IBM. I think we've got a few representatives for different organizations here. Docker as well. So if you work for one of these and you're not aware that your organization has or has not submitted anything, reach out, talk to whoever gets that survey form, make sure it happened.
Yeah, if you reach out to Amy, she can tell you who the name of the person is for each of these members, one at a time.
I'm sure she would love that. And yeah, that'll work too.
Well, she gave me the IBMer and I was surprised.
I'm curious as a former IBMer who on earth that would have been, because I had no idea when I was there either.
It's currently Jeff Borick. Do you remember
Okay.
Jeff?
It's Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I
That's not surprising.
left to the Linux Foundation, and around the same time, or maybe 6 months after Phil left to Amazon. So it got a little weird.
I was still listed as the contact for Oracle. I haven't worked there in 4 years, and they're not even on this list, which is kind of funny. So
That's what I'm saying. Is this the right list, or is it just logos that got added to it?
You got to
This
keep writing a
list
check.
just got updated like a couple weeks ago because it had not been
Okay.
touched for a couple years. So Amy just updated that on her side.
Yeah, this particular type election is a little weird because you don't know who's putting in the submissions or if they forgot or that sort of thing. It's like,
Yep.
Okay.
Hence me saying just a quick reminder for anybody that works for one of these. Really
Yeah,
good
so
double check.
I gotta poke Jeff Borick to nominate somebody. All right.
What you tell Jeff to do is pick me, pick me. All right, so onward to the next agenda item. This one's been sitting out for a long while. I don't think we have got Derek on the list, do we? No, I don't see him on the list today. I did put a question out last week saying, hey, based on our meeting in December, we were kind of leaning toward the direction of either close this or change the milestone, and wanted to know if he had a preference. Given that I haven't seen an answer from him, do people here have a preference? Do we just want to change the milestone on this and push this off to a later date?
I think it's still important personally, but because we're restricting the language to must, I think his issue hasn't been taken care of. If you want to change it to should, then I'm okay with postponing his new API changes that he's going to propose.
From
Only
the
because
discussion, from the discussion we were having in December, everything he was saying was it needs to be additive, that it can't break whatever people are already doing today. And so that
right.
discussion made it sound like everything he was proposing could be pushed off to a later release.
Oh, I thought it was the opposite. I thought he was saying that if the language was currently should, then the additive changes would not be breaking, right? That he would be proposing. He was talking about what he was going to propose was non-breaking. I don't think he was saying, let's ship one with the must, and then I'll change it to a should when I change the API. I don't think he was saying that. Or is that are you saying that would be okay?
I think when we were chatting in the meeting, he said the must language was okay with him. He was just asking to add some new features, but that all goes back to the December 14th meeting, which has been a while back. So it might be worth just viewing the recording.
Okay. All right. I guess it depends how you determine what must means, I guess, in that context. Is there any way we can add additional language that would explain that in a future release, there would be non-breaking changes that would allow said 1.0 model type storage and a graph driver, for example?
Not sure I follow.
Is there any additional language we need to add so that we can convince Derek that this is okay to postpone and get his vote.
I think that's what he already agreed to. It's just a matter of having him confirm here.
Yeah. I don't get the impression that he needs more. It's just that he's probably really busy and it's where we're at holidays and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
And so my understanding is this is the last sort of open issue. Does that mean we should be thinking about a release immediately after that?
I think it was the last major issue, but certainly there are minor issues with the various specifications around this. This must not having been changed throughout the rest of the spec.
Everything else on the day's agenda is just knocking out punch lists so that we can get an RC out.
Yeah. Are we able to talk about a timeline on this call? Do we have the right people?
I would say as soon as we get all this stuff cleared out on the milestone, I would make an immediate request to make an RC tag.
Great.
So we can vote on it. But that's just as soon as we get this stuff cleared out.
I mean, I guess in the spirit of wanting to make sure that this issue is resolved, there is another opportunity for that for Derek as a maintainer, in that when we cut an RC, he's got to vote on it, right? So, I mean, in the spirit of moving things along, since it's been several meetings, several weeks, what do we think about moving this to 1-2 with the comment saying, you know, we're assuming that's okay, and then we move on to cutting an RC? Is that reasonable? That's 2 maintainers nodding. Okay. Yeah, I mean, not to leave it behind, but it just sort of like maybe he's even lost interest at this point. So I would hate to like push it another week and another week, and you know, at some point we're all going to lose interest. So yeah, I would not that I'm a maintainer, but I would like to put that out there for maintainers to pick up.
I think we should merge the PRs that are low-hanging fruit. I think a few of them had like requested changes from Mike that have been resolved, and then yeah, just cut the RC, either keep it in the milestone or take it out and just see how it falls.
Yeah.
All right. So is that a call to move forward?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one, Mike, you got a couple comments on this one for the 491. This refers to a missing manifest, and this is just cleaning up a little bit of the wording here. I can go back to the actual text, which was, I believe, just deleting 2 lines out of this and adding some test code for it. So the 2 lines we deleted were just saying if you push a manifest that has a subject, that subject doesn't exist. Previously, there was this third scenario where you could accept it, but return back an empty response to the refers API. And this is saying if you're going to accept it, you need to return it to the refers API request. Kind of eliminating that third scenario. So we've got 2 approves on this one. And I want to make sure that any comments, questions, and whatnot that you had, Mike, were resolved. I think your biggest was on the CI, saying, hey, we've got a big flag of content discovery. That was the same flag we had everywhere. If we want to make more granular flags in the conformance test, we can add those. I don't think we want to do it necessarily in here, but we can always make another PR to make more granular CI test.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously it was removing that scenario. Are you saying here that we're okay with adding them back in under more granular, or that we should go ahead and? It didn't seem like it's been resolved. It looked like it was just.
I didn't resolve this in saying I was going to add a new variable in this PR, just because we don't have that for anything else in the conformance test. But if we want to make a PR for making conformance tests more granular, I would say that we could consider that in a separate PR. And I'm not opposed to it. I just don't think necessarily we should add a special flag for just this one test in this one PR.
Okay.
Don't need some time to look this one over.
I like the Josh Dolsky response. I approve.
That came out of previous meetings. I mentioned we were looking for you for a while you're off on vacation. We're like, where's
Okay.
Mike? We need him to answer this stuff.
Yeah,
Just because I have a cowboy hat.
Just, yeah, I don't know. Brandon, do you want to open up an issue to handle or to keep track, or do you want to do it to do?
If you want to open
Either
one
is
up,
fine. Either is fine, right?
yeah, if you want to open an issue up, go for it.
Do you want that issue to be contention on release, or do you want it to just be a future issue? It will test it better.
I think it's easy enough to make it a future issue. And this is one of those things where if someone has a scenario that they really want to make sure that it works in that case, they can always say, let me go ahead and test on a newer version of the spec and see if I can pass with these extra flags.
Yeah. Okay. And you understand what I'm saying? Of course, I understand the pattern. It's just, we're back to the same question again. Are we changing the spec now to only support this new pattern and no longer testing the old pattern? Right?
The old pattern from a previous RC. And so this is cleaning up like an in-between case that only existed in a release candidate before we cut the release to say, yeah, we're just going to have two scenarios, not three.
Yeah. I'll open an issue and then accept.
Cool, thanks. And let's see, this one had comments from a lot of people. So Mike, I know you had had some in there. I don't know if I've resolved all yours or not. Feel free to chime in otherwise, because we went back and forth a whole bunch on that. And then there were some comments back and forth saying, hey, we'd like to have clients asking for this before servers take the effort of adding the header. And so this one, for everybody that doesn't remember it, which is easy to do because we only chat about this once a week, is that we're adding this new OCI refers header. And originally it was just an OCI refers absent header that says, hey, by the way, I know you're asking for this thing. It doesn't exist, so don't even, or I know you're just querying this manifest, just so you know the refers don't exist, so don't even bother trying to ask for them. And that's just an efficiency for clients. Servers don't have to. This was always a may. And there was a request that clients preface that by when they query for the manifest, that they include something saying, can you let me know as a server that it's even worth me taking the effort to run that extra workload to generate that header for you? And so we added a new OCI refers request header from the client side where the client queries the server, says, I would like to know this if you've got it. And if the server sees that, and if the server wants to include that, it can. Again, this is all an efficiency. If people don't want to do this at all, we fall back to just querying the refers API like we always do. I think it was John and was it maybe Josh? Who else was on that one asking for that second little bit of a header? No, well, John and Michael. So
Yeah, I mean, and you discussed that in your 5B. Client wants refers, 5B, if there are refers present, the header exists, and refers query returns listing, but the point was that if the header says there's refers, then I'll know that I need to go get them, right? If the header doesn't, then
Are there situations that you've got where you as a client would query this, would pull the manifest from the registry, you would want the refers, and if you didn't see the header, you wouldn't query for the refers?
well, I think my issue here was that we have a scenario where there's multiple clients in the chain, right? We've got a Kubernetes client. We've got kubectl clients. They go through Kubernetes, kubelet, and then we've got the cry API, and that goes to the container runtimes, and the container runtimes pull these images, right? So it's not just the initial pull. There's additionals later on, and we need to know if we, based on certain policies, whether we should be pulling the refers or not, right? Where are they located? That sort of thing. I think your scenario was, well, they may want to pull these, artifacts from another registry, right? Regardless of whether or not they received a header saying that they have these artifacts in the registry that they pulled the image from, right? What we don't have right now is a set of client tooling to say, I want to pull an image and its artifacts, or later on an image that is currently located on the current host, to go check for refers on a particular other registry, right? We've got a way to configure this stuff. Right now, we only have a way to configure to pull artifacts from the existing registry that the image was pulled from. Right?
So I want to split the multi-registry scenario out from this, because this doesn't even talk about that at all.
Okay. Well, that was my question, right? Or in part, it was my question.
A registry server has no idea if there are artifacts stored in a different repo somewhere else. This is all scoped to a single repo.
Okay.
And so the idea on this is that you would have a client that pulled the manifest, and it was going to pull the refers anyway.
Right.
And so now
I
the
guess
registry server is just giving that feedback and saying you don't need to do that.
Right. Well, and in part, we've got a state issue, right? When I pulled the image, the header said there were artifacts. I didn't pull them yet, right? Is a state that we could have for images. Where with your refers API, without a header, present, you'd have to go pull the refers from that same registry, right? Eliminating the multi-registry, question. Even from a single registry, when do I run the refers? Do I run it right away? Do I only run it if I'm told by the registry that it has specific artifacts that are local, and I go ahead and do that when I pull the image? Or should I call the refers? And then on the other side of that client question is, when kubelet decides they want to pull artifacts, do I have to use the registry, or do I have to only use a cache of these artifacts that have already been pulled? See, and I think both answers are correct, and it depends how the administrators and the clouds want to provision this, right? And customers want to provision it for their pods, right? And their user scenarios. Some are going to want to do it one way, some are going to want to do it the other way. So I liked the idea of these headers being available, just on the initial pull to tell me, hey, we've got artifacts already on this particular registry. I can cache that, and I can put it in a label, if you will, in my response on the status of the images before I call refers and pull them.
So the direction I'm going to take is, if you want refers, you should more than likely be querying for the refers anytime you don't see that header.
And I'm saying it's the every time is what I'm trying to eliminate with optimization.
And so I
know what
think
I'm
the
saying?
people that want the present header that I've been hearing from outside of yourself, they don't want a present header. They want some kind of E-tag equivalent header of, I don't just want to know that this artifact, that there are refers. I want to know a unique ID of what those refers are, so that
Yeah.
I know if they've changed since the last time I pulled.
Since the last time, and that's sort of what I was asking about too. Are
And
we
that-
are we
that would be
changing
above and beyond
from a, we've
this.
got everything cached as of this point in time model, or are we going to call refers every single time we create an image that needs an artifact?
Would
That would be above and
putting-
beyond this.
And that
There-
would be like what if you had, you know, hundreds of referring artifacts? Like that doesn't seem likely to be. I like the idea of this being a Boolean short circuit. But I think that even in a caching scenario, if refers are present, you would always then ping the API. If not,
Not
it's just a
necessarily, not if
sanity
it was
check.
in the header. See, we do,
Well,
we've got
This
this
one- but if it's
pre-authentication
in-
process, right? And recheck. So
do you?
first time you run a pod, we're going to check for, you know, images and probably start storing artifacts. The next time you run the pod, they're going to say, does it already exist? Yes or no. And we have to decide, are we going to force a reconnection and a recheck every time we run that same image?
Right, but
Check to make sure it's gotten updated artifacts, right?
right. But that'd be the equivalent of saying like referring by tag and saying, okay, do I have this thing cached? And then verifying the digest upstream hasn't changed. We're going to ping the registry anyhow.
Bingo.
So,
but
but
what
if
we
you
do,
have-
we don't call refers, we check if the manifest has changed. And what I'm proposing that we do here instead is check that the manifest has changed. And if there was a header, we can check to see if the header has changed, indicating
I
that there's a
do-
different number of artifacts.
I do get that. I just think I was just agreeing with what Brandon said, is I think it might be outside the scope of this because it seems a little more complicated, and when you have like lots of refers. Michael has his hand up though.
Yeah, I'm just going to say the same thing that I've said every time, and is I think that we should be more conservative than this about adding functionality that is like not critical to important code paths like pull. And like me and looks like Averall commented and John are all saying that this kind of feels funny to us to do on every request. So I don't know. I don't have a way to vote no, but I would vote no.
So you don't think we should do a header, which sort of proposes that the artifacts need to be stored probably somewhere else or have a completely different process than the pull.
Yeah, or we could do a header in one too, but it seems a little premature to say we need to optimize this now before we even understand how it's going to be used in the wild. Like I don't see this as something we need to have for the initial release of refers. I think it's something that we wait and see, and we get data on like how many wasted requests are actually being made before we put this in a spec.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just to the loop, I know your hands up, Brandon, but just to loop back on what I said, I like the idea of a Boolean short circuit more than any other option, but I agree that this feels a bit like an optimization before we have functionality. I think you use the word premature and optimization in the same sentence, so I would agree with that. Though sometimes that has a negative connotation, right? So, but I agree.
It's one of those
Brandon,
things I
you have your
wouldn't
hand
mind.
up.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind throwing some tests on my side just to see how much improvement it would create for the one scenario, for the bullying scenario. I don't know how much I would be able to leverage out of the other scenario of having the change header in there, some kind of e-tag equivalent. But
I
either
can
way,
tell you
I would
the pull
push.
if not present policy in Kubernetes is very important for performance, especially when you're using local registries. Not as much when they're public, because in public clouds, we usually push or pull always, which will recheck every single time you go to run an image. Pull always will recheck that you have authorization still to use that image, and it'll recheck the manifest, even if you haven't asked for pulling latest, right, Brandon? But at the same time, it's not performant at all. We're talking orders of magnitude slower to run a container if you have to connect, if it's a small container. If it's a large container, not as bad. But you're looking at 3 seconds to run a pod versus a couple hundred milliseconds. It's not a small change.
Yeah, for me, the efficiency on copies is significant if I don't hit that API a whole bunch of times. And so the fewer times I have to hit it, the better it is.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I think
I'm
we both
thinking
got
I'm thinking of
concerns
this
of
from the
similar problems.
Kubernetes
Yeah.
use case more so than the client tools on push and pull.
Yeah,
But-
I think we both have concerns on what this is going to mean for long-term performance.
Yeah.
So we're looking at 3 different scenarios. One is postpone this entirely to 1.2. I wouldn't be opposed to that. The second is we merge this as a binary right now as 1.1 and just get this out there, and then people can or cannot. It's a may, it's not a huge big deal either way. And the third is postpone merging this until we get something even bigger and more complex that has some kind of E-tag response in there for that. So did I capture the 3 different use cases that we're back and forth debating on? I see at least one vote to push this off into 1.2.
I think
but I
we're
don't.
arguably pushing the big one out of the milestone. I think pushing a small one is okay. If we're going towards like, let's get something out, this seems something that we can add later.
So merge this one as is in 1.1.
I was going to say move to the other milestone.
That's what yeah, and that seems to be what Sajay proposed, and there's 3 thumbs up on it. So it seems to be quorum, at least here, is that we would opt to just move the header to 1.2.
All right. I will change this milestone out. Done. One less thing for us to worry about.
And we'll have, real data. We'll be able to test easier, right? We can think more completely about it. Awesome.
So to be clear, we're going back to the may skip language. Is that for one?
Now, for this one, there were 3 options. The having no header at all, having a header in there that just says it's absent, and having a header in there that was absent and some kind of full E-tag, and we opted to postpone everything to 1.2. No new header in there for right now.
Okay, so you're going to modify this PR. I'm looking at it right now, the text, and it currently says changing it from may to should. So you're going to modify this PR.
We're on just the same PR.
You're looking at 463.
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking at in the text. It's
463 was always a may. Where was
may. Okay.
Was there a should in there somewhere that you were looking at?
Oh yeah, sorry, that was my suggestion. Okay, so may skip is fine.
Yeah, this was always a may.
Okay,
just
so we're
to-
adding the may. All right. Not removing. It sounded like you said we were going to remove the header.
Well, the header wasn't there before, so we're postponing this whole thing to 1.2. So by postponing this, there is no header in 1.1.
Okay, so no action on the PR.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, so this one is now out of the milestone. One less thing for us to worry about. Thank you to Josh for moving the other one. And yeah, pagination, we don't have John here, so I don't think we can do anything with that. And this is a quick conformance test one. I threw the milestone on there. I don't think it's required to be in the milestone, but it's so quick and easy. It might be easier just to merge it rather than debating which milestone it should be in. All it is fixing a few spots of our conformance that if the blob deletes are allowed, then you would get a accepted or maybe a not found. If you get a not allowed header in there, that is now being permitted. And that was permitted in other PRs. We've gone through there and done that. And then we missed that in some other future changes. This is just adding the method not allowed as one of the refers responses if you try to do a blob delete. And then if I see that, then there's some code later on that says, hey, before you try to delete a bunch of blobs, if you've previously seen that method didn't allow, don't even try to do that. And since I've already got the thumbs up from Josh, I was hoping this would be an easy one because he's the other one likes these conformance tests as much as I do.
Yeah, seems reasonable. Do you need, I mean, it's your PR, but that's 2 maintainers, right? So just move forward.
Technically I'm supposed to get a second maintainer to look at my PR.
What do you think, Mike?
I was typing up the other one.
I'm facilitating. I'm your new TPM. I don't know if you've met me. Hello.
Sorry, what's going on? I was still working on the other one. Blob delete permits 405 response.
Yep, 499.
That's the one.
Was there related to 179? Can you link to that? I don't have it up on my screen. 179.
This happened way back in 2020, where someone was like, hey, can we do this? And we said, sure. We updated the conformance test in a whole bunch of places and fixed it. And then we added new conformance tests that didn't do that.
Okay, cool.
And so this just goes out there and says, hey, we got some conformance tests to fix. Fixed a few of them.
Oh yeah, I've seen that before. I just didn't get an approve in. Yeah,
Yep.
I'll send it. Thanks.
Yep. So we just add a little, that's allowed now kind of header.
Thanks. 499. I'll hit the approve on that. Check the code real quick.
Fantastic. All right. What do we got left in the milestone? Are we to a good spot now?
There's one more that I think we can merge on the call. And then I would propose, if we haven't heard from Derek by the time that's done, we can work on the RC and just see how it lands in the mailing list.
Which one do we miss from the milestone? Or which one are you looking for a quick merge on?
491.
Yeah, 491.
Okay.
We have the approves, but there's a change request from Mike from before the holidays, and I think it's been addressed, but
That was the one we talked about earlier today, wasn't it? 191.
Yep. And then we were going to, I think you said on this one, you wanted to open an issue up for more granular conformance test.
Yeah. Doing that now. Got awful quiet all of a sudden.
I stopped
Like-
talking and took notes.
Seems like
Yeah.
no one wants to jinx it.
I haven't breathed in 92 seconds.
While Mike is knocking a few of those out on the pagination, do we want this in 1.2? Or is there anybody that says this should be in 1.1?
Is it in a milestone now? I don't, yeah, it's not, right?
It is not, and that was why I threw it on the
Yeah.
agenda, was to say, should it be on a milestone
I-
somewhere?
I want to err towards if it's something additive later that will
Yeah.
not break, to punt it.
Agreed.
This is something that's going to break no matter what we do. And so do we want to do a breaking change in 1.1 or push off the breaking change to 1.2?
One dot two.
I didn't hear any screams of the mouse over there, so 1.2 it is.
We're at .1, right?
We're currently at 1.0 trying to get the 1.1 out.
We're at 1.1.01 or 1, whatever.
Yeah.
Some future. Yeah.
Yep.
As long as it's not a breaking change, I don't think we have an issue of updating
Yeah.
1.1 as we add.
This
But-
one is breaking.
It's a breaking, but it's going to be breaking anytime, so it might as well be
Yeah.
breaking in 1 too.
There is nothing we don't break
Imagination.
by doing it sooner. It's gonna
And it's
break
a
sooner.
and it's this the housekeeping thing too, right? This is a good thing to do in the spec, not a things are going to be broken in 1.1 if we don't do this thing, which is kind of what I think, Josh, your point was, right? If it's yeah, this feels very fine to put into 1.2.
And it's breaking only because it wasn't well defined before, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The
I don't think
text
that's,
from
I wouldn't
1.0 is
qualify that as a breaking. It's more of a,
anybody following the 1.0 text will break if they try to implement this. So if a client and server do not agree between the 1.0 and whatever this text changes it to, they will not work correctly.
and that probably needs to be service packed into the prior releases as well, right?
I don't know if we can push a breaking change into a prior release. That would be a whole different thing.
I think
I'm gonna stay
there
out
were
of that.
differences in opinion on the implementation of pagination, and we probably need to fix that, right?
I mean, there is an opinion that's hard coded in the spec right now. It's just one that a lot of people don't like for good reason.
I'm gonna go ahead and prep the RC.
0.
He's got to compose a original poem, so
Yeah.
Gotta
I
say,
think you should, if
Yeah.
we can do some
Yeah.
embedded MIDI programming on that to get a little bit of a melody out, that'd be great.
I would actually, on a more serious note, I'd like to discuss what we had the time. If there's anyone on the call that's interested in joining as a maintainer, or how we feel about growing the list. Transparently, just so that we don't end up in a voting quandary over this release. Most of the people who are supporting the project have been on these calls, and so at least in the last few years. So I don't think it's unfair to add someone. Anyway, curious people's thoughts, but I'll continue with the RC.
Yeah,
We
where
haven't had an
where
issue getting the voters voting, right?
is the upcoming vote documented somewhere? I was trying to find it. I can't find notes on it or anything.
the maintainers are separate from the TOB vote.
But they
Oh,
both need
yeah, yeah.
supermajority, I think.
They do. Yeah. Sorry, I was seeing those as related. They're strictly
We don't have like regular
orthogonal
campaigns
things.
for maintainers. It's a nomination.
Sort of a no-no to change the number of maintainers when everybody's voting and there's a contention currently engaged, underfoot, if you will, to get a different result.
I've talked to a few people, and this was actually suggested as a potential path forward.
Oh,
if
yeah,
we
sure.
are stuck on something, then by going through the proper channels is we could add or remove maintainers. So I wasn't going to go to removing maintainers, but we can go there too. I think we need an active maintainers list who are going to vote on these RCs and understand the landscape of what's been going on the last 2 years. So maybe we won't have an issue. It's a way we can hack around this not getting a quorum by one vote thing.
Yeah, apologies for side railing us there. I wasn't, full disclosure, I was doing something else at the same time. We had discussed that, like, even in person at KubeCon, right? The idea of like some of the maintain, and this happens, like, this is not a personal thing. It's just like people get busy. It happened in Kubernetes. Mike, I'm sure you recall a couple of the last 18 months or so of just kind of turning over leadership roles in various SIGs. People get busy, people get pulled into different job roles, people retire. So I think it's reasonable that, you know, something as important as the OCI specifications and their maintainers are, you know, kind of freshened up every now and then. I think you'd start with the current maintainers and say, hey, what do you all think, right? And if you get no response, that might be an indication. But yeah, I think it's a good idea to look at that.
I'll get a hold of Derek and see what his status is. Like I said, I'm pretty sure he was looking forward to a break over the Christmas holidays. And we'll see. You know. And he's been busy doing container D releases. And he's been implementing this code, right, from this specification in container D, adding artifact support. So
I guess to Josh's question, are there people on this call that want to be distribution spec maintainers to be nominated? Because there are a bunch of people that have been very involved.
I have some interest.
Yep. I agree with you, Josh, that Sajay, Michael, and Ram all come to mind for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Sajay already was.
Sajay is image spec and he is being very quiet for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I just don't want to jinx the RC right now. Let's just get that out and then we'll worry about the
Yeah,
rest.
but I didn't mean to jump the gun and assume this won't work out. Maybe it'll just work out. Just
I've got to drop early. That won't jinx anything, but I do have to run. Thank you, everybody.
see you, Jess.
Talk to you again soon.
All right, given all that we have there, stuff has been merged on this side. I think image spec has been good for a long while. Let me double check that milestone. Yeah, all the stuff on image spec is just saying, let's cut a release. So I think we're in a good place to do another RC here. And then we'll see what we can, you know, get votes on.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. In terms of who's putting those together, Josh, I got the impression, is he still here? Yeah. You're doing distribution spec.
I am.
Do we have a volunteer for image spec, or should I just go ahead and knock that one out? I would take that as I should knock that one out. So I'll get work on that as
Thanks, Brandon. I mean, I've been doing the last couple of them, so if you want to take it, good. But if you need help, anytime.
every time I put my name on something, somebody comes up with a comment afterwards saying, hey, I want to change all this. So whenever you put it out there, Sajay, everybody approves it immediately for some reason.
Get support first.
All right. If nobody's saying anything else, I will go ahead and work on getting the, thanks there, Josh. I will get working on the PR for image spec in a little bit. And then we can get some emails and all the other stuff out there and get the voting started.
All right, you want to drop?
I think so. I think we all want to cheer first, so we're like in a point that we can do an RC.
Exciting.
I think
I've
everybody's just
learned not to
exhausted.
celebrate too early anymore.
Everybody's too exhausted to
Stop drinking
celebrate this point.
champagne.
In Sajay, speaking for the image spec, I did find lots of conflicts in the text around, the artifact definition and what needs to be validated and that sort of thing for artifact references. Can we talk later on that, or?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
If they're all additive, then we can rev them even afterwards accordingly.
yeah, it's basically that I'm just saying.
The wording, right?
Look at the details, at the details of like descriptors are completely different and more restrictive than we're assuming they are in this current artifacts distribution API. It's like, whoops, there's some fixes we need to put in there, or it's just in conflict and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be in conflict. Basically, we've redefined the restrictions on a descriptor when it's being used for a subject. And all we have to do is go in there and change that text to say, unless it's a subject reference.
Yeah. I mean, like the other properties like data and things like that didn't carry over. Are you referring to those?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's just too restricted. You'll see some must language in there. It was really put in there originally for this graph stuff that we've been talking about.
Right.
It's like it must be a DAG. It must be a DAG if it's a descriptor. And we're saying no, it must not be in our distribution API. We're saying it must not be with the new must restriction. Must not be a DAG.
Makes sense. So you want to carry that same concept over to image spec, right?
Well, we need to be consistent.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
That's all I'm saying. And I'd prefer the consistency be should language as opposed to the must language.
That's where I was leaning towards. That's also where I was leaning towards, because when we do the layouts for the referrers, and we want to keep a referrer index in the OCI layout, we might not have that. So that same loose should might be necessary on the other side. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just need a little more consistency so that when we're talking about the artifacts use of the descriptor, it's defined separately. Or you can make it a should language when it's being used for image layouts as opposed to for artifacts that refer to image layouts.
I'll take an action item just to open an issue, and we can kind of like hash on that.
Yeah, I mentioned it a couple times in my head. That's one of the things that's holding me out of saying yes to the distribution API when it's in conflict with the image spec. It needs to be in sync with on a 1.1, I think.
Okay. Okay, I'll open an issue and I'll try.
You're not just being a hard ass, Josh. I am paying
no.
attention.
I mean, it's fair, right? Like if you have conflict, then I'm guessing the implementation folks will have more conflict. So
maybe, yeah. Sometimes people don't read the specs, which is why I was asking about the test cases. If the test cases don't check the validation of certain language, then it's what's the spec for?
Okay.
And we'll find out later that we have a CVE to address, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Josh, my proposal on your additional is, sure. We generally do that every time after we do a release. Right after a release, we propose new and changed maintainers. Almost always, unless somebody says I got to leave, right? Or if there's no contention, right? It's like, okay, but yeah, I personally, I would prefer not adding or removing maintainers to get the vote we want.
I would also prefer that scenario, to be clear.
Yeah, there's got to be.
Here we are.
There has to be language that we can put in the spec that handles both scenarios. That's why the must language is, you can even say must do one of these two things and still have must language. But the must language right now seems to be contradictory to the image spec, the parts that I was talking about with Sajay, and current registry implementations that we've had for a considerable amount of time. Thus my vote. Okay. All right. I'll call Derek and see what's going on. All right. Thanks, guys. And let's fix this. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.